When I perform a psychic reading for someone, what I'm looking at is the structure and organization of their etheric body. Now, the information that I see during a reading does pertain to the etheric chakras as well as the condition of the etheric body overall. So when I look at a person's energy, either in person or remotely, what I'm looking for is the overall functionality of the etheric body. Now this does include the etheric chakras, and so when I read for a person, I'm looking for their highest functioning centers as well as their lowest functioning centers. And when I'm able to see the information, so I have the highest functioning, the lowest functioning centers, what it does, it gives me an overall picture of where the individual is energetically. It gives me information about their psychology, their physiology, and the condition of their emotions. Now this information is actually really useful for several different reasons. One, if you're a healer or body worker, I can actually see where energy needs to go back into the system. Say where the individual is losing energy out of their sacral center or out of their basic center, which I refer to as the Kundalini center. So it presents me with an overall picture of what's going on energetically with that individual. Okay? Most of the people that I read for, or I should say the majority of the individuals for whom I have read, have issues with the solar plexus center as well as the sacral center. And so what I want to do today is just talk a little bit about what it means to function at the second and third chakra level. Now, what it means to really function at the sacral level is to have normal sexual relationships with people. And by normal I mean that center is not hyper-functioning, so it's not excessive, and it's not closed. I do encounter a lot of people who have basically shut that center down, as well as the solar plexus center. And so a lot of people who come to me have issues, again, with the sacral center, which is our sex center. It's also the center through which we mediate most of our human relations. And then the solar plexus level, which is where we mediate our fundamental emotional connections with people. Okay. Now again, I see the majority of disturbance to the people who come to me. I see a great deal of disturbance in both the sacral centers and the emotional centers. Now, over time, what happens is individuals who are functioning at a hyper level, at an excessive level of activity at the sacral level, they end up closing that center down for several reasons. One, they find that a lot of their sexual contacts do become painful after a while. And so they stop mediating energy through that particular center, so that way they don't have to get close to people. Now, I've seen basically the same thing happen at an emotional level, where people go through severe emotional relationships, such as divorces, major separations, deaths, and they'll actually stop mediating energy through that center. And so what they do is they basically shut down their second center, the sacral center, and they shut down their emotional center. What happens from there is, it depends on the person, but most of what I'm dealing with would be individuals who no longer engage in normal sexual activity, or who no longer engage in just intimate relationships with people. They found that there's too much pain, too much disharmony through relating to people through that particular center, and so they shut it down. The same thing happens at an emotional level. You know, when we're dealing with people who are, for instance, in our childhood environment, I do see this a lot, where people are raised basically in environments that are hostile to them. And so what happens is that as a parent, as a caregiver comes in contact, or repeated contact I should say, with a child's developing solar plexus center, they end up mediating their anger, their frustration, through that center into the center of their child. And so that actually creates pain in that center, in their emotional body. And so after a while, the child learns to basically shut that center down. So once they do that, they're basically become cold, shut off. They don't engage their environment emotionally anymore, because when they do, there is an emotional repercussion there's pain that has evolved out of that situation. I think that each one of us have encountered somebody personally through one of our relationships that no longer functions either, well, even in our intimate relationships, they no longer function at a sexual level, or they have problems with sexuality. Again, a number of the people that I see who come to me in my practice, they are suffering from sexual dysfunction. I see a number of people, both men and women, again, who are suffering from sexual dysfunction. It's not just men, but women as well. And I see a lot of reproductive issues, especially with women. Especially, in fact, if the emotional center, the solar plexus center, as well as the sacral center are shut down together. I've seen some really interesting scenarios develop where, for instance, the uterus is actually tilted over on its side. There, again, are fertility issues. A woman cannot achieve pregnancy, or there's a whole series of miscarriages. Because what happens if the person is shut down emotionally as well as sexually? Well, the sexual issue is still relevant, because they still may want to conceive, but they're trying to conceive through the lens or the energy of a closed sacral center. So what happens is that when they're closed down at an emotional level and at a sacral level, there's no energy to support a pregnancy, really. And so they don't achieve pregnancy. Even if they consciously want to try, subconsciously there are still factors at work that have closed those particular centers. Now, in extreme cases, I've actually seen people who have, through repeated abuse, either at a sexual level or at an emotional level, completely dislocate their emotional as well as their sacral center, so their solar plexus as well as their sacral center. They've taken each of those centers and they've completely torn them out and displaced them. Now, what happens is, again, for instance, if we're talking about being raised in a hostile environment, the solar plexus center is located about here. And what happens is when somebody approaches us, their emotions are being emitted through their solar plexus center. And when those emotions come toward us, their first point of first contact is here at the solar plexus level. Now, if we repeatedly engage somebody who has a hyperactive or excessively functioning solar plexus center, normally this means that the person is enraged, angry, violent all the time. What happens is that those particular vibrations continue to come into contact with our solar plexus center. Over a period of time, a person will recognize that this individual who's approaching us, who is a fixed aspect, or an apparently fixed aspect of our environment, and so rather than rejecting the person, they will take their solar plexus center and remove it off to the side, so that way any energy that is mediated toward them actually does not come in contact with their solar plexus center. They do this so that way they can continue to live in their environment, which again seems to be fixed. You have the mother, the father who continue to emit hostile energetic forces, and so those forces continue to register. But if the child, now a young adult or even an aging adult, has a displaced solar plexus center, again they do that so that way they can continue to interact with their environment in a way that doesn't continue to cause them emotional distress. Now, I've seen displacement occur at a sacral level as well, and I've seen this happen primarily in terms of I'm going to call it rape or sexual abuse, where that center gets completely dislocated because, again, the energies that are mediated through that particular center are too much, and so the individual, through their mind, will basically take the energy center, shut it down by dislocating it. Now, this sort of begs the question, what does it mean to function normally at a solar plexus and sacral center level? And it's not that it's impossible. It's that I do see some people who are functioning normally at a solar plexus and a sacral level, at a sexual and at an emotional level. But for the number of people who come to see me, again, I see the cross-section of the population who is dealing with emotional and sexual issues. Now, that's not the only issues that I'm dealing with. I see spiritual issues, I see creative issues, I see just general physical issues like fatigue, pain issues. But again, a good cross-section of the population that I deal with, again, are having issues at the solar plexus and at the sacral level. Now, what does this really mean? What I'd like you to really think about is how the question is, how can I determine how I'm functioning at an emotional and at a sexual level? Okay, so at a solar plexus and at a sacral level. And I would say the easiest way to determine that is looking at the baseline of activity of one or both centers. Okay, now what is the baseline of activity of your emotional center? You know, as you go through your day, are you experiencing feelings of anger? Are you feeling emotions of hostility? You know, what is the baseline of activity here? Is it depression? You know, these are all experiences, all emotions that we tend to experience, but each one of us has an energetic benchmark or a baseline of activity that we function at. Not only emotionally, but also sexually. Okay? It's not only sexually at a sacral level, but it's also our fundamental relationships. You know, our relationships to our family. Our levels of familial intimacy. How do I relate to my mother? How do I relate to my father, my brother? How am I relating to my girlfriend, my boyfriend, my spouse? You know, all of these things can give you an indication of where you are functioning. Okay, and this is really important to start being able to be able to start working on your overall energy body. Okay, and the thoughts that are underlying the condition of your etheric body. Okay, so what I would suggest as a simple meditation is sitting down, spending maybe 5 or 10, 15 minutes a day, in really looking over the emotional activity that you've exhibited during the day. Look at the week. Look at the month. Look at the past year. You know, a lot of times if a person is older, you know, I'm going to say anywhere from 20 to 80, you know, they have a fixed way of interacting with their environment emotionally. You know, everybody knows that habitually crabby person, the person that you can't really approach because they're always angry or in a bad mood, right? So you also have people who you don't go to for any kind of intimacy. You know, you don't open up to them, you don't share, and that's because they're generally closed off. And so when a person is closed off energetically at a sacral, at an emotional level, they're closed off to their intimacy, they're closed off to their emotions. And so you know by approaching them that there's nothing there to receive energy from you. There's nothing there to connect. Okay, but again, looking back at your own energy pattern, what sort of energy are you exhibiting in your personal environment? Okay, again, looking at it from a sacral level, looking at it from an emotional level, what sort of energy are you exhibiting into your environment? Or a better word would be, what sort of energy are you emitting into your environment at an emotional and at a sacral level? And again, this is a really important question because all of our relationships are mediated through these particular centers. Okay? And each one of us is forming relationships on a daily basis. Maybe even at an hourly basis as we walk through the streets, go through the grocery stores. We're coming into contact and we are relating to other people. So the question is, again, how are you relating to other people emotionally? And how are you also relating to other people sexually? Again, these are really important questions, especially because they do affect over the long term your sexuality, the way that you relate to other people, and they also affect your emotions, how you perceive the world and what you think about the world. Because really at an emotional level, this is how we first feel the world. Our experiences, you know, as we go through the first chakras, the sacral center, well, the basic center, the sacral center, the emotional center, it's only after we've come in contact with an emotion that we can really begin to think about it at a sixth level, at a third eye level. But here, the emotion that we feel, you know, is first. It's primal. And this really determines how we think about the world, because if the world that we're inhabiting is a world of pain and suffering, we tend to, at a psychological level, at a mental level, avoid that world, and we adapt our behavior to it.